Okay, another video to speak more specifically about the concept of training. For most people, training is something you're doing at a dojo or at a gym. In the case of martial arts, preferably with training partners and wearing a dogi. Uh, I really disagree with that. I think training is something that should be part of your entire life. When you ask Akuzawa Sensei and you ask him, okay, so how do you train? He says, oh, I don't train. I don't have time for training. And you feel like, okay, that's weird because you're actually improving. But what he's not telling you is everything he does all the time is training. And that's what I want to talk about. How you can make every single moment of your daily life training. That means that you're not going to train 4, 6 hours a week. You're going to train every single minute except when you're sleeping. Okay? So that's massive. Okay, you're going to train more in one day than you were training in a couple of months. So this is absolutely massive in terms of impact on your training. So what does it mean concretely? I think a big part of training is about building awareness of your body. So the first thing is, of course, you're doing solo exercises to understand what is the standard. What is the perfect position? That's why we do Maho. That's why we do Shiko, Tenshiji, all of this. It's giving you a framework. It's say, okay, that's the frame. That's how the body is supposed to move. Okay, that's great. But you do that a few hours a week only, best case scenario. Now what you want is to bring everything back to that. So if you consider that as your gold standard, so let's say it's a 10. Now you want to see every time you're moving, you want to be able to analyze where you are compared to this 10. In most cases, people realize that they are off track when they're reaching 1 or 2. If you're able to realize you're off track when you're at 7, that's already way better. When you look at Akuzawa Sensei, we could think that he's never doing mistakes. It's not the case. He's doing mistakes, but he's picking up on them way earlier. He's picking up on them when he's at maybe 9.9. So we don't even realize that he made a mistake. He did, and he adjusted it, but to our eyes, there was nothing to be seen really. Um, so if you take it this way, I think training is much closer to what you do in meditation. Meditation is not about not thinking of anything. It's about if you realize you're thinking, your brain is wandering around. You want to be able to be like, I was wandering around. I go back to my breathing. And you want to do it quickly. If you've never meditated and you do it the first time, it might take maybe 5 or 10 minutes before you're like, oh gosh, okay, I was totally lost in my thinking. So if you're able, when you're at 9, be like, okay, I go back. Then that's great. And that's the same thing for training. If you realize your balance is slightly off, you can come back. If you realize it when you're already here, it's too late to come back, right? So let's see concretely what that means in your daily life with a couple of very simple examples. Okay, first example will be walking, because it's an activity we do all the time, right? So again, what you want is to be aware of what you're doing, and you want to be aware of how you're walking. If you're asking most people how they walk, they'll be like, okay. So you want to know, are you pushing in the ground? Are you kicking the ground? Is your center of gravity going up and down as a result? Or are you shifting weight from one leg to the other maybe? Okay. What is leading the movement? Are you leading from your feet? Are you leading from your chin? Are you leading from your pelvis? There are so many ways of doing it, and I'm not here to judge which one is good, which one is not. It's not really the question here. The question is, are you aware of how you're doing it? What you want to do first in Ankai is you want to create a neutral body. Neutral means that I'm not overly bracing like this, popping up the chest, using my lower back, kicking the ground. Here I'm using a lot of unnecessary power and muscles. You want to be lazy, okay? And if you're lazy, you use the minimum needed to be able to stand. So here, okay, here I'm good, and now I can walk. Okay, so here I walk, and that's fine. Okay, I'm feeling okay. I can move around. If I start being here, I have to be aware of that, and then I can get back to my normal one. Then the question that you will have is not just when you're walking, although you might go into autopilot, but when you start reaching for objects. If you reach for a beer, if you reach for a door handle, if you reach for anything, what part of your hand are you using? Are you using your fingers? Are you using just like this part? Are you using the palm of the hand? What are you doing with your elbow? Is your hand going like this? In most cases, it might be. And if you look carefully at what I'm doing now, so I'm lifting this, my shoulder is lifting, my foot here, my heel got disconnected from the ground. I'm actually getting unbalanced here. Okay, uh, it's okay to do that. I mean, I'm doing it quite often. I keep picking myself up, thinking, you did that again. So it's fine to do it, but be aware of it. So if you're here, like, okay, that's not great. I'm off track. What would be a better way of doing it? If you look at Akuzawa Sensei grabbing a beer, he's never doing this, and even less that. His torso is neutral, his head is well maintained, and his elbow feels like it's down, heavy, and he's reaching like this, right? So if you want to go for a drink, you want to go for the door handle, maybe you want to go like this, right? So this is neutral. My elbow is here, my hand is just going. I am minimizing the number of muscles I'm using. My body is still neutral. I'm not unbalanced. I don't have to fire a lot of muscles to keep me standing. Okay. When you look at this movement that he's doing, that's how he grabs anything, right? That's also how he's doing sagete. So if you do sagete and you do this, good luck, right? So if you're here, you're neutral, you're engaging your elbows down and out, and you drop, then your sagete is much more likely to work. So that's exactly the kind of things you want to think of anytime during your day. You don't have to have a partner and do sagete. Every time you grab something, you're training your agete. You're training your tsuki. The way you punch is the same. You're here, boom. This is down, and I'm reaching. I am not punching this way. You see how this is engaged? I'm falling. If I miss my target, I'm screwed. I'm not using proper body mechanics. I'm pushing and bracing all the way. Instead of that, you want to be neutral, organized, boom, here, boom, here. Okay? This is a much better way to move. At least that's the one we want to get in Honkai. So the way you grab the door handle is a training for your Tsuki. It's a training for your Sagete. Something else you can work on is if you sit a bit, if you work in an office, or currently we don't, we all stay home, but if you sit on a chair at home or you go on the ground, you want to try to assess what mechanics you're using and what muscles are firing. Quite often when we go down, we tend to have the neck engaging here. If you do that, there's probably an issue somewhere. Your neck shouldn't be firing when you're sitting down or standing up. Right? It means that it's basically doing the job of a different part. So just be aware of that. Are you using something that you don't need to use? If you're using your elbows or your neck for sitting, you're probably off track, right? So what is a better way of doing it? Even if you're working with your girlfriend or boyfriend and you want to hold hands, how are you going? Are you like going like this way to grab, or are you going with tenouchi, proper structure, and reaching for the hand, right? The way you will grab his or her hand is the same way you would grab your partner hand to do kotegaeshi, to do throw, to do anything. So use these opportunities. Every single thing you do in your life is about movement. What Anka is teaching you is how to use a new operating system. All right. So think that your former operating system doing this is outdated. This is a new one. But if you do this one 30 minutes a day, and then the rest of the day you go back to the old one, when you are under pressure, which one do you think is going to kick in? The old one, right? So try to make it your default. If everything you do consciously all day long, you go boom here, you work here, you sit down this way, do things this way. Okay, you're in control all the time. Bit by bit, your brain, your body are getting this as being your default. And so when you're under pressure, you will just use your default, which is this operating system, which is much, much more effective. So forget about training at the gym, training at the dojo, wearing a doggy. These are great. These are great for you to get additional insight, additional guidance, getting feedback from partners. It's great, really great. But most of the training happens outside. Okay, and great thing is currently we only have outside, so that's the time to do it.